The problem, Ricky, is if you look at the academic conversation, if you look at the mainstream economic and political conversation, where is that history?
In the media, why aren't we hearing about these things?
Up to us now, isn't it? And that's
Money talks in a male voice. We trust each woman's identity is shaped and strengthened by discovery of her own economic truth.
Being in community is completely different than being on your own as an individual.
I grew up middle class in a majority Black, poor, and working class neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York. And my church home was one that embraced liberation theology and exercised it through cooperative economic activities related, as I remember them, to real estate.
My grandmother sent a very clear message that in order to take care of myself, I had to be able to provide for myself and to provide for my families.
I was only in elementary school when these things were happening, but I remember keenly seeing significant life transitions happen for my friends that were moving from public housing projects to single family homes through this understanding that pooling resources can lift us all up.
It goes all the way back to my great-grandmother, a woman who passed before my existence, but I've heard the stories and know of her and her caregiving work and how that transformed into my grandmother and it transferred into my mother. So, you know, I was always told, you're not going to do this work. You're going to go to school, you're going to do something else. And they were just so adamant about it because it was totally unappreciated and underpaid work.
The more I looked at how unresilient our healthcare system is, the more I realized that that economics was behind that. And it was like, what are we spending our money on? What are we putting our trust in financially?
There's a lot of interesting shifts that are taking place in reshaping how we think about food, our relationship to food, and the support for farmers, especially related to small regional farmers. And a lot of them are impacted by a lack of childcare as well. So there's a lot of ties back between women in the workplace, especially related to our food system.
What really drew me to this work was I was pregnant when Trump was elected. I was a parent of that premature infant at the first Women's March. And that just made a huge impact on me, seeing the anger all around me compared with the isolation that I was feeling at home. It really made me think, like, how am I living my values?
We look at solidarity economy and we go back to sort of the traditions that many of us, know that we come from, right? The traditions that many of us have either come to this country with or that have been sort of like, that our ancestors and our families have been steeped in, but that we forget because we have to fit into a particular style of economic justice.
I found that cooperative economics and its expression through the co-op business model gave me access to an opportunity to support folks in expressing their own self and community determination efforts.
I'm calling in from the Headwaters Garden and Learning Center, actually, which is an eco-village I founded back in 2009. We are based on permaculture, regenerative principles.
Like, my family's from the Philippines, like I mentioned, and we had 500 years of colonization. So women haven't been free, not to romanticize, the social relations of 500 years ago either, but women haven't been free for a very long time. It's different in Hawaii, just less than 200 years ago. I mean, women and their families still have memories of what it was like to be much freer than it is today and have a society that, the myth of bartering, it wasn't transactional. It was a gift economy. And it was about community care.
We've built it as a community land trust so that it's permanently affordable housing for people who are everyday Vermonters. It's not a gated community for the 1%, which is a lot of what happens to intentional communities in Vermont.
People are fed up. And when people think about the economy that they want, I bet it's more fair. I bet it's more just. I bet it's probably more democratic. These aren't new ideas. And they're not disconnected from the ways in which people are already practicing economy in their own lives.
What would our healthcare system look like? And I also say, what would our agricultural system look like? If science hadn't been concentrated in this way, if it had also been developed over time by Indigenous people, by women, by Black and Brown people, by working class people. And I say we don't know, but one thing we do know is not like this.
If you think of our political, economic, of our worldview, it really marginalizes our conventional categories, right, left, religious, secular, Eastern, Western, Northern, Southern. Our studies of economics, our studies of society, they either marginalize or ignore the majority of humanity, women and children. That is crazy, and we need to stand reality right side up.
Moms, especially now, need to be considered essential workers, right?
Earth's ecosystems, they're overloaded. We've overloaded them. And so now we're reaping the results of not understanding that economics is not only about sources, about resources feeding the economy, but it's also about things, absorbing the leftovers. Where do they get processed?
How do you even start to think about self-sufficiency when you're dealing with intergenerational trauma and when there are no resources to heal from that, so that we can flourish and so that we can be at the table, so that we can have a voice and actually achieve, all of these amazing things that we're expected to achieve, that, we're said that we are owed in this country of liberty and freedom, et cetera.
Capacities are exhausted and people and overloaded, right? And it's women who have historically, they've contributed that work. If you don't get fed, if you don't sleep, if you don't get loved, where's your productivity going to come from to go to work the next day? It's not going to happen.
We went around the room, what does poverty mean to you? And our answers range from having to engage in survival sex. That's what poverty means to me. Suffering with a broken arm without accessing the hospital because I was undocumented. That's what poverty means to me. To not being able to get basic items like tampons and pads because they're so expensive. And so I have to use toilet paper and wads of paper towel. That's what poverty means to me.
A lot of the reason why women feel intimidated with investment and finance in general is because of the lingo. And because of, I often say that there is a language barrier. There's an assumption that everybody in the room knows so much more than you do. You're the dumbest one. You don't want to bring it up because, like you said, you may come across as if you're stupid and you're less informed. And that's the last thing you want to do. You feel like you're carrying the weight of all women on your shoulders. The secret that I learned, and it took me a long time to get to this because I felt the same way for so long. And then I realized they don't know what they're talking about either.
I really come to this not as an expert on public banking or cooperatives, but as an expert in really understanding that the way our economy is set up right now simply was not built to uplift women, in particularly Black women. So I'm bringing an intersectional lens into this discussion, and that we need to come up with alternative solutions and not even just, I love this frame of an economy of our own, but I'd also like to push us further to say that the economy writ large, which we have control over, right? The economy is made from rules that we put out there. It's not its own natural thing, right? We control the economy. We are the economy.
What I learned is how much privilege I have and how much more care work people are doing than I am, and with how much less help. And that's really started to make me inspired to start organizing parents and thinking about, if parents organized as a workforce, if we thought of ourselves as workers who are unwaged.
We need economic structures and systems that actually uplift women.
The carbon cycle that regulates our climate isn't just about fossil fuels and CO2. The carbon cycle is the unfolding of creation itself. It involves every living thing in the past, present, and future, from the tiniest organisms at the bottom of the ocean to our heartbeats. Any real solutions, therefore, will have to include all the aspects. On the one hand, that may seem like a daunting task, but on the other hand, it means that any lasting solution is likely to help solve the whole thing.
Our work really centers around looking at wealth as the economic North Star because, there's income. Income is a part of your wealth, and we think wealth is a North Star because wealth, while we're living in a capitalist society, is what affords you power, right? It's what affords you dignity. It's what allows choice.
The 99%, if we get together and if we communicate and work together, we can beat the 1%. I mean, we've got the numbers. They've got the money, but we've got the numbers.
The aim of our whole plan was, how do we use this moment not just to stimulate jobs or get women into the green infrastructure that's around a Green New Deal or what have you, but even bigger than that, completely shift the value system.
We can actually back out of the carbon mess that we're in because of the fact that new and organic and regenerative forms of agriculture actually help pull carbon out of the atmosphere. So that's why I went and started what we're calling the regeneration revolution.
And I think that we also have to understand that domination economics is bad for everyone, women, men, and children. Domination systems are trauma factories.
We're witnessing the side effects of what colonization has done to a place. I say often, in introducing myself, that I live in Cancer Alley, just north of the dead zone. And that being this legacy of, plantation society and petrochemical, industrial, I don't even have words for it. It's really yucko. But I'm really super excited and honored in spite of all the darkness.
Women are organizing around an analysis of feminism that's decolonial and that is rooted in a completely different value system.
It's really a legacy of liberation, right? And a legacy of looking at the world differently and living differently and ensuring safety, dignity, economic security, et cetera, all the things we know we want. Deep in our gut, we know we want it.
Looking at the world through the female lens, if you will, is one of the key ways, I think, to address some of the real serious problems we've got.
If we're going to think about the future, it doesn't need to be just about addressing the problems. It needs to be, what is that focus? What are the values that we want to see moving forward, and really getting to those, not just fixating on where the problems and where it's broken.
We know that the traditional financial system, so traditional banks in particular, right, are continuously finding ways to extract wealth from people of color and women in America. So it's really intriguing to me to have alternative systems, again, and design them and implement them in a way that actually centers Black women, because that is the polar opposite of what we have right now.
My definition of leadership is someone who's working to make things go well around them, whether their efforts are recognized or not. So the second part of that question is where and how are women leading in the project, whether their work is recognized or not.
And for those of us who don't have a chair, we're going to have to create our own tables, or we're going to have to create a circle and sit on the ground and say, this is the table. We've named that this is the table. Let's all sit around that table.
If you think about what a regenerative economy would be, it's fundamentally female.
Talking about making an immediate change of divesting from this huge system is really scary for people. There's a comfort in it. There's a knowledge about how it operates, sort of. Kind of a knowledge of what they're doing.
A key puzzle piece fell into place when I learned that the money we use every day is created and extinguished by bank lending. Commercial banks, I was amazed to find out, not only collect interest on every dollar that passes through my hands, they are the deciders about who can borrow how much new bank credit based on one intention, which is to build their own power.
or I had always been interested in the fact that banks, not governments, actually create our money.
We need permanent, stable value, just money, controlled by a truly representative government.
It's one of the key ways we could make the economy more like nature is to have an ecology of currencies instead of the monoculture monetary system we have, because it really is the root of the problem. And it's a very male institution, it's very yang, and it's driving a lot of the decisions that are driving us to this eventuality.
Folks who are interested in solidarity economy need to begin talking more about it, need to begin to frame it as an alternative, need to begin to frame it as what can be the new sort of normal, because it was happening. It's been normal to many of us. Can we frame it as what can be the new normal?
Each time people organize, we're in this moment now where there's socioeconomic and political unrest. And so people are turning to collective and cooperative economic practices to meet their needs because no one is coming to save us. But you can bet that there will be resistance to that from the establishment. And so in order for us to really move, we have to strengthen our associations of people who are doing this work together.
I hate to say it, but politics and policy is slow and it takes some patience, but we just got to keep, ramming at that door to get what we need for the sustaining, a sustaining environment for our most vulnerable women.
We need to work together to create pathways to get back home, and also knowing that our home places are up against, these rising waters and these cycles of storms. And so how can we think of our garden network as one body?
We're so used to being on the defensive and constantly being reactive to all the crap that's being put down. We don't get a chance to vision and be proactive and talk about what is the society we want to create, and then what are the institutions that'll get us there. And when you have that conversation with people, they are talking about community, they are talking about shared prosperity, they are talking about abundance, right? They are talking about understanding how we are all interconnected to one another, that our fates are intertwined.